Good morning, afternoon, and evening, everyone. Welcome back to a fresh new episode of Knock Off the Perch, a Manchester United podcast. In this episode, we discuss our very recent draw against Aston Villa. This was touted to be a must-win match for Erik Ten Hag. So, in this episode, we'll break down the style of play of the teams, how our defensive resolution went on about to get the draw, and we'll also break down what needs to change in this team. So, Aruj, how you been? How was the match for you?
It was a drab. I think it was the most boring United game I've seen in a while. Sometimes it's not bad to have boring games. I mean, we have seen few very exciting games, but being on the wrong end of the result or, leading the games, ending up drawing them. I'm talking about the Porto game there. So I don't know how I feel about the entire situation we are in. It's a very I'm somewhere in the middle in terms of drastic changes are required. Okay, we need to be patient. I think I'm somewhere on the middle of that spectrum. But this game in particular almost felt like Erik Ten Hag came in with the resolution to not concede. And one could argue he was successful. But in order to achieve that, I think we compromised a lot on our attacking. As we get into the second international break, we are 7 games in, having scored 5 goals in 7 games in the Premier League doesn't show up well for our attacking unit.
You said you're somewhere in the middle, and that is like bang on because all the fans I've talked to this week, the one state I'd say they are in is confused.
You're talking about the sane
I'm
fans.
talking, I mean, of course, there are trigger heavy fans, like there are trigger heavy boards. I'm glad that we aren't a trigger heavy board, don't have a trigger heavy management right now. But yeah, even the sane fans, everyone is uncertain. Everyone is uncertain of what they'll get out of United. And it shows. After the Tottenham loss, it was said that these 2 games will be seen as a barometer of where we are. What did we get in these 2 games? In one game, we see a headless attacking performance in which we score 2 goals and yet we come out of the game at a 3-3. In the second game, we see good defensive structures, but nothing in attack. I don't think we did anything at all in the Aston Villa game to win the game, especially in the second half. We had about 5 touches in the box. The game I'm seeing and the game my manager is seeing are definitely 2 different games. Because my manager keeps on telling me that we are improving, we are having a good momentum. I fail to see the momentum, to be very honest. It's been 5 games since we have last won a match. And, I fail to see where we improve because it's like the quote which goes on, Mo is saying that we need to improve on our defending, midfield and attack. These are the 3 things we need to improve on. And, our manager talked about the international break coming at the wrong time because the momentum is broken. I mean, what momentum are we talking about? What is he smoking? Please, can you elaborate on if I'm harshly judging Erik Ten Hag on his press conferences and what he sees in the game?
I think we spoke about this briefly in the last episode. I think a manager needs to have a few skills to manage a club like Manchester United. And while being tactically sound is probably at the top, you definitely need to be tactically sound. I wouldn't make my judgment if Erik Ten Hag is the best tactical manager for Manchester United at this point in time or not. But apart from that, you need to be a good man manager. You need to be a good media manager as well. And I think man management wise, again, I'm not sure. Although we have in the past had Sir Alex Ferguson, who was very strong on the players, and Erik Ten Hag has shown some bit of that side. But I'm sure at the same time, Sir Alex Ferguson was also protective of the players a lot. I don't know how good Erik Ten Hag is at that. And on the media management side of it, I think he is very poor. I mean, some of the things that he says, I don't think somebody really needs to sort of be a good PR manager to Erik Ten Hag and tell him what to say, what not to say. It almost feels like to me that he's too honest a man or too honest a person who comes out in front of the media and says things as is. I mean, whether it is about Rashford being rotated, so to say, I mean, you could simply say he got a knock and nobody will question it as such, and you can play him in the next game. Or be it stuff like Jadon Sancho in the past. I mean, I appreciate the fact that if he was not up for it in training, you didn't select him in the squad and all of that. But then can you be a little more diplomatically right in front of the media? Maybe. And then this entire narrative about trophies. He's been talking about in every single press conference. So I think all of that, and which is why I think the media targets him more, right? They realize that, we will get these bites out of him, out of which we can get headlines off in the next print or the next article when it is put up. So all this combined, I just feel Erik Ten Hag has a lot of work to do. Let's see what Ineos and the management decides over the international break.
The one thing which I got out of that match was exactly the word you used. It was a drab performance. I understand the manager cannot come out and say that, yeah, this was a drab game. He would say that we did this tactically. We were very resilient, over his words. But to come out and say that we are the top in clean sheets, we have had 4 clean sheets now, that's not something to celebrate about, is it? I mean, you've been handed over 3-0 defeats by Liverpool, 3-0 defeat by Tottenham. You haven't won a single game in Europe yet. And Europa League, I'm not even talking about Champions League. It sounds a bit tone deaf to me when he comes out and he's taking the piss out of the fans. So yes, he should be better PR advised. But that being said, this is not where I want to see my club at. Celebrating a draw against Aston Villa. I'd much rather see, as much as I say I love clean sheets, I'd much rather want to see my team give it a real go. I never felt in this match at any point of time that we gave it a real go in this match.
Yeah, I think...
Okay, let's discuss the... Yeah, go ahead.
I think you were also going to get into the specifics of the match, and I was also sort of moving towards that. So I think how the team was set up, firstly, when we talk about the starting lineup, I think nobody expected that both De Ligt and Martinez will be benched. So I think that was a big statement, whether it was a repercussion of the fact that we conceded 6 goals in 2 games against Spurs and Porto. And specifically, De Ligt and Martinez were at fault for a few of the bad plays that we had. So whether it was that, or maybe it was a combination of that and protecting some of the players. But Erik Ten Hag pretty much reverted apart from Onana and Mazraoui. And Onana was signed last year. Mazraoui was the only new signing who was part of the starting 11. The likes of Eriksen, the likes of Evans, Harry Maguire, it was almost like he's turning the wheel back to 2 years back, where he's depending on experience more to be able to hold solid in the game, to be able to ensure that we are not making mistakes. But that came at the cost of not being able to attack that well. So if we came in with the mindset of, okay, we don't have to concede in this one and maybe try and nick a goal. Okay, we tried to nick a goal a couple of times. I think it was Rashford early, maybe in the first 5 minutes when he had that similar shot to how he got the goal against Porto, that he came close to. And then nothing apart from that Bruno free kick, which again, I would say had it gone in, it would have been pretty much an individual goal at that point in time. We win a free kick, we get goal out of that. I'm just getting a feeling that he was being very protective to say, okay, we will not concede in this game and we'll try and nick a goal. So while I did call for pragmatism in the past few weeks, I am happy that we had a better defensive structure, but then being so drab going forward, that is definitely not Manchester United, and it doesn't hold well for us in the long run.
You talk about pragmatism. I don't see what other drastic changes other than the defensive lineup could he have made to make this game a lot better. We had our most creative and most attacking players on the field. It's not like we did much rotation in the front half. Maybe instead of Eriksen, it could have been Ugarte, making us a bit more mobile. But I still feel Eriksen gives us a bit more control and get a bit more creativity in the center of the park than Ugarte does.
No, you're right. Personnel-wise, I don't think a lot changes, but I think it was the instructions given to those personnel. For example, at least what I observed, I didn't see Dalot moving into the center of the pitch that much. So I think Dalot was holding his line around the left back position. So which is where, so that ensuring we're not giving a lot of spaces on the left. Rashford also, I think, was doing fair amount of tracking back or covering the Aston Villa fullback Matty Cash, and which is where I think Evans also didn't have a lot of pressure, which Lisandro was having when Dalot was cutting into the midfield. So I think apart from the personnel, it was also about some of those tweaks to say that, okay, we will not try to overload the midfield or third of the pitch, which can sometimes end up creating those gaps. So we were taking less chances. So I think it was pragmatism, not just the 2 central defenders, but it was also pragmatism in the style of play.
I'm all for pragmatism, but it cannot come at the cost of us trying to win games. Pragmatism will be if we are defending smarter if we are creating, I don't know, certain big chances in the game which help us win the game. You talked about the Marcus Rashford chance. One more chance we created in the second half when Garnacho was through on the right wing, and he could have and he should have passed it to, successfully to Bruno. If it was a successful pass, I'm like 100%.
That was also a
Bruno would
counter,
have
right?
buried that in. Yeah,
That was also a counter.
Because,
Yeah.
yeah. So pragmatism is that, but we cannot have players like Højlund and Zirkzee, strikers like this, and them not getting any service. They thrive on service. To which point, will be coming to Bruno. Like, we have to take the case of Bruno now. Like, his performances have called for a benching now, to be very honest. I mean, see how he's doing at Portugal. I hope he's able to turn his performance, but it cannot be that Casemiro, who's coming at 85th minute, is creating more chances than what Bruno has done in 85 minutes. And that was the case for this match.
No, with Bruno, to be very honest, I fail to understand where some of these issues are coming from. Because right before this period of 6-7 games, the international break, I think he was superb for Portugal at that point in time. We come to this particular set of games against Southampton, maybe he was decent. Barnsley, he didn't play as much. And then since then, he has been really poor. In fact, in the last game, I think maybe it was an instruction to him or whatever, and which resulted in him in not creating as much. But I think he was doing the short passes right. I'm now obsessed over the pass completion rate of Bruno in specific, which was in some of those games around 74-75%. It was 90% last game. So is it an instruction that, okay, you don't try all those crazy things that you do, crazy passes which can result into a brilliant assist at times, but you at least do the basics right? And this, again, I'm coming back to the entire mindset for this Aston Villa game. I think we went in with the mindset to not concede. And if we get a goal, great. Otherwise, we walk away with a 0-0 draw, which happened. And I'm just trying to think situationally. Had it been a situation where, okay, maybe we were 12-13 points, we are going away to Aston Villa, getting a 0-0 draw, it may not sound that bad, right? It's just that the situation is so dire where we are not winning games, where the games we are leading, we are ending up losing control, drawing 3-3, is where the fans were really demanding for us to go for a win. And maybe Aston Villa was there for the taking. They were ragged in the game against Bayern Munich, which was Wednesday. I mean, any logical thought process would have led us to believe that they won't have the same intensity. So maybe do we counter press? Do we sort of put them in a place where we can run over them and maybe grab a goal or two? Could that have been an approach? But then again, that was it would have been almost like a dual-edged sword. If we do that, we will end up conceding because they can still counter well. So I don't know. I don't know the answer to this, but it doesn't leave a good taste at the end of it.
A lot of pundits have so slow because of their European match. We had a match on Thursday. The teams are going to have matches on middays, and I don't think it drastically impacts the performance. I didn't think Aston Villa were that bad this game, to be honest. I really believe, okay, we have to talk about the good things we did here. We have to talk about a certain Jonny Evans, who we sold 12 years ago, who came back into the team and is performing better than the, 200, 300 million defensive outlay which we have laid on. He came in to train with us. He had retired, he had left Leicester City. He came in to train with us. Suddenly we see him in a friendly against Wrexham, and suddenly, come on, he rolled back the years. Graham Potter talked about him. He said a defender need not be the fastest, but he needs to be at the right places at the right time, which Jonny Evans was throughout the game. What did you make of his performance?
No, absolutely solid performance. I mean, there is no doubt about that. When we saw that lineup, obviously there were all these memes doing the round that this is 2019 Leicester setup with Harry Maguire and Evans being our centre backs. But the man has always delivered when he's been given a chance, and he talked about that. And which is where I think a lot of these new players lack this, that feeling of pride, that feeling of privilege to don the Manchester United jersey, play for the club. I think Evans has it and he plays to his best potential whenever it comes. Now, I'm not saying he's going to be our savior for the entire year or maybe the next year as well. But the point is, in some of these games, when we need to be defensively resolute, he's a great option to have. Obviously, if we are in games where, there is a defensive block, we need to maintain a high line, maybe, or in most likely, Evans will not be our choice because, the opposition will try to play on the counter and he will not have the speed to handle some of that. But the fact that, he tried 4 tackles, all of them were successful. He was all over, whether it was Watkins, whether it was Morgan Rogers at times. He did not allow them, and the kind of aggression that he came in with, body language wise, it was almost like a class for the other United players to sort of learn from and respect the jersey when you are donning that.
Yeah, no, agree. And on that matter, we should also give credit to Harry Maguire, who I don't think has put a foot wrong this season. I mean, whenever he has played, he hasn't played much, but whenever he has played, he's played good. He played half of the game this time. He won honest aerial duels and was pretty neat in his passing and in his possessions as well. We talked about this, that we wouldn't mind if Harry Maguire was brought in for either of Licha or De Ligt, who haven't been on top of their forms in the recent games. We have conceded a lot of goals with those two. We need to talk about those two being a pair, De Ligt and Licha. It's not working out as well as we thought it would, right, on paper.
Again, so I don't know, maybe I'm sounding like I'm speaking on repeat, but how we are being set up, I think, creates a lot of challenges for these guys, because essentially what happens is when you are trying to press, and you spoke about, I think, a pod or two before, that our press is very unorganized. It is not based on a specific trigger that we should be starting the press. It's sometimes very unorganized. And when our front two in the 9 or 10 positions press, then it leads to the two in midfield to also sort of squeeze that gap and push ahead, and which leaves a lot of gaps. Now, what that tends to do is, in a highly progressive system, your center backs would also press forward and you will create a very high line of defense, and you would rely on the speed of your defenders to be able to manage any counter that may come through, where a speedy counter the opposition tries to do. Now, I have a feeling that Erik Ten Hag has not been able to take a decisive call on whether we do that high press from a defensive setup or keep our defenders at the back. And sometimes that leaves them in two minds, because we have seen when we went 10 men against Spurs, a lot of times Licha Martinez would almost like step up in the midfield to do that high press. But once he was beaten, it will obviously lead into a sort of a no man's area, and there is empty field for the opposition to run. So I think this tactical nuances are also creating a lot of uncertainty in players on what to do. And truth be told, they are not at that level where they will be only dribbled past once or twice in the entire season or stuff like that, which we have seen from the likes of, let's say, Virgil van Dijk. He, at his prime, I don't know what are the stats this year, but at his prime 2-3 years back, he was probably dribbled past only once in the entire season or twice in the entire season, right? So Licha Martinez and De Ligt are not at that level, and which is where ensuring that they play a highline defense also doesn't work, because they can do a mistake and then the opposition will have areas of open field to run into. So it is a mix of both. It is also the fact that I think we are not able to settle in that central defensive midfield position. Sometimes we are playing Casemiro, sometimes we are playing Ugarte, sometimes we are playing Menu and Eriksen as a combination. So unless all of that settles in, I think we will have these problems.
Rotation will be key, right? I don't think personnel-wise and setup-wise, these are top-notch professionals. I mean, isn't this what our scouting department does? See if a player can play well in, I don't know, 1 or 2 systems. And hasn't the manager got his systems right, that, the setup, we're talking about the setup game after game. Anyway, this was the defensive setup. The other burning question that I have, and a lot of fans have right now, is where are the goals going to come from? We had Højlund and Zerzi at different points of time on the pitch. Both didn't make a shot on goal. both didn't make I'm not talking about shots on target. Both didn't have a shot throughout the game. In 90 minutes, two United number 9s or 9 and a half didn't have a shot on goal. How is that going to play? How is that? I know we're going to talk about setups. I know we're going to talk about our midfield not creating enough chances for them. But that being said, we have always had one or two players in our lineup who will take the game by the scruff of the neck and create something on their own. We talk about systems should be robust enough for chances to come at regular intervals of the game. That is not happening. Then it comes down to individual capability. If Bruno is not creating enough, it cannot be that Bruno is the sole creator in the team. We have seen when that is not happening, we are very slow. We are a very boring team when that doesn't happen, when Bruno doesn't click. So where are the goals going to come from?
And this is something that our management should have thought of, because expecting inconsistent Rashford, a raw Højlund, and an untested Xerxes to lead our line, I don't think that's the most optimal decision making that happened in there. Because last year also we spoke about the fact that we wanted two strikers to be signed, and Rasmus Højlund was always that upcoming striker who was signed to play second fiddle to a main striker. We never signed that main striker. Rasmus ended up playing a lot of minutes that season. Although he ended up scoring 16 goals, and on the signs of progression, you would expect him to get 20 goals or something like that as well this season. Hopefully that still happens. But ideally, you would want your centre forward and your wingers to contribute to goals. Now, Garnacho has been wasteful. Ahmad has been decent as, trying to do those 1 or 2s, but he's still not there that he will give you 10-15 goals a season. And so that is right wing. Left wing, primarily it's Rashford. Rashford has shown signs of improvement over last year, but he is obviously nowhere close to what he was the season previous to that. So I don't see goals coming from him. Bruno has been inconsistent. Xerxes is too new. Plus, he believes more in link-up play. He may not be available in those final third where, a true poacher needs to be. So, come to think of it, we don't have a consistent top-class forward who can get those goals. You would expect Rashford to turn into one, but I think that's expecting too much. So, given the lack of players, the lack of a set system, I think this is bound to happen. We should be doing better, but the unfortunate truth is not. We are not. Last season, we saw McTominay, Casemiro contributing with goals, which sort of saved our face somewhat. This year, we have seen Harry Maguire, De Ligt add goals. So, I don't know, but it doesn't seem we are in the right direction with regard to our goal scoring.
No, so if we don't have a true out-and-out goal scorer, then obviously the goal scoring responsibility will be divided amongst players. We will be expecting, and it's not a wrong expectations to be kept. We will be expecting Rashford, Xerxes / Højlund, Garnacho / Ahmad, and Bruno to contribute with the goals. And I don't think that's a very unfair ask for them to contribute 10 goals each or 12 goals. Just all of them to enter into double digits. And on that note, you mentioned McTominay. I think we should give a shout out to both our ex-players, Scott McTominay as well as David De Gea, for doing brilliantly over this week. David De Gea
killing it in
saved two penalties. Yeah, saved 2 penalties against AC Milan. Had a good man of the match game, and Mr. McTominay scored in 52 seconds. Someone has profiled Scott McTominay very rightly so, and that person is not Mr. Erik Ten Hag, but it is a certain Antonio Conte who's brought in McTominay and who's been scoring in last 3 games, 2 goals, 1 assist, by the way.
I wouldn't say Erik Ten Hag didn't profile him well. I think for a change from the other managers, he profiled him fine. He was bringing him on for these, pseudo striker / number 10 positions. And in fact, when Bruno was not playing, he ended up playing number 10. It was, if you ask anybody in the United fan base or the punditry circle, would you replace Bruno with a Scott McTominay? No. Which is why if he is profiled as a number 10, he didn't have the space to play that role in United. He was a squad player. He did well as a squad player. So I don't have a lot of regrets there. I'm happy for Scott. He is doing well. He deserves that. But even with Dia, for that matter, I don't have a lot of regrets the fact that he left. I have regrets about the fact how he left. A good send-off would have been brilliant for David De Gea, but kudos to him. A good save from the uh, two good saves from the penalty spot, otherwise good saves as well, and a well-deserved man of the match performance for Fiorentina.
Yeah, no regrets on the De Gea part. I think his form had gone a bit bad in the last couple of years when he left. But see, I only talk about McTominay because we were talking about the lack of goals. McTominay for the good part of the last season was our top scorer. If we are selling a player like that, don't you think it would have made sense to, I don't know, buy a player like that?
But you always had a Mount to play that number 10 role, right? Now he is not fit for majority of the season. That's a different thing altogether. And I don't think if we hadn't sold McTominay, we would have been able to buy Ugarte. So it was about whether we need to fix that 6 problem more or not. So see, at that point, in hindsight is always 2020. At that point in time, it felt like the right decision. I still agree with that. I don't have a lot of regrets with regard to that. But yeah, from United's goal scoring standpoint, the two strikers, whenever they are playing, the 2 out of the 3 wingers, whenever they are playing in Bruno, I think this combination of 5-6 players really need to step up.
Agreed. Okay, so I'd like to talk a couple of minutes about the position of Erik Ten Hag now that we know these 2 games ended up in draws. One was a very haphazard draw and one was a very resolute defensive performance, but again ended up in a draw. We hear reports that all the management has gathered that the meetings are underway. We obviously are hearing rumors about potential replacements, but would it be a right call as of now to replace Erik Ten Hag? I'll put my position right now. I am very ambivalent towards it. I was very Erik Ten Hag in before these 2 games, but considering that I don't know what I'm going to get out of the manager, I wouldn't mind terribly if a new manager was given a shoe-in, even though I've seen the cycle of managers come in. It's about one manager coming in and it clicking. I don't know. I'd hate to say that the last 4 or 5 managers haven't done that or have done that at inconsistent times. I do believe it is an option now. It is an option, a new manager coming in and taking the reins, and I don't know. What are your thoughts on it, Arij?
So I'll put it very simply. I don't hold a lot of affection for Erik Ten Hag as the manager anymore. I think since the mid of last season, the kind of performances we are having, okay, we won the FA Cup, but that run was also so much based on individual creativity, individual chances, individual brilliance. You saw the Liverpool game, how we won that. You saw the Coventry game, how we won that. Okay, against Manchester City, we played much better. But there was definitely not, a clear forward direction in which the club was moving, whether it was injuries, whether it was lack of personnel, whatever it was. So I am not very affectionate towards Erik Ten Hag, but what I am pro is a little bit of stability, a little bit of patience around the entire new hierarchy that has come through. And with the new management, new hierarchy, if you change the manager, it again creates a little bit of shift, new things start happening. You might see a new manager bounce in the beginning, but is that a solve for the long term? Maybe not. And as you said, I think I'm pretty much on the same boat right now. It doesn't matter to me whether we keep Erik Ten Hag, we remove Erik Ten Hag. I don't think it will make a lot of changes. I will back the management unless I see a really poor decision being made, like a Gareth Southgate being brought in or whatever. I will back the management. So from that standpoint, whether it is a new manager, whether it is Erik Ten Hag continuing, I think we just need to ensure that the philosophy that the management has come in, because manager eventually, if not now, 2, 3, 4 years down the line, it will change, right? But the philosophy that the management is coming in, and this management most likely is here to stay. So the players they sign, are they coming in with a certain footballing philosophy? Are they getting the manager who will play that footballing philosophy? I think that becomes more important in the larger scheme of things. So if they keep Erik Ten Hag, I hope they keep him with a certain thought process in mind that, okay, this is the manager who will play the kind of football we want to. If they sack him, I hope they get in a manager who will play that kind of a football. And this entire media circus is what I really hate. Now, we have already linked Michael Carrick to an interim role who could sidestep and become an assistant manager when a permanent manager is signed. We have linked Thomas Tuchel. These are strong linkages. Otherwise, we have linked Karen McKenna, Inzaghi, we have already linked to this. So I just hope some of that is put to rest. I don't know how, but that's the hope.
So yeah, I mean, at knock of the purse, we are not Erik Ten Hag out. We are not Erik Ten Hag in. We are Erik Ten Hag. We'll see.
We will see indeed. With that, we've come to the end of this week's pod. In the upcoming weeks, United players will be away for the international duty. Hopefully, they showcase their talents for their national teams as well and come back rejuvenated and in a better space, in a better form, and then they're able to translate it into a good form for United as well. And hopefully, we can, and we've been talking about this a lot in the last few games, but the game against Brentford can be a start of a good run where we can stitch a few wins together and hopefully climb up the Premier League table, climb up the Europa League table, and also progress in the Carabao Cup. With that, thanks everyone for listening in. Do share your thoughts with us on how we can improve this further. Do share this with your friends. And yeah, as always, this is our perch. Let's knock him off. Until next time, stay united.